won't catch up.
No, you won't.
Okay, I think we're ready to begin. If anytime you need your refreshments refreshed, feel free to walk over to do that. So this is our 10:15 forum. So as soon as this talking stops, we'll get started. But you can ask questions, I'm sure, in a little bit. But today, in our forum, we have with us Trinity Kline, and Trinity is the head of NASGEM, and I'll let her tell you things, about herself a little bit here before we start. And we're just very pleased today to have Steve and Jake and Patty Michelle and Trinity all helping out with the RIC Sunday celebration and education.
Hello friends, I'm Trinity, I use she, her pronouns. Like Jean said, I am the director, the interim president of Prism Network, and the director of NASGEN, which is our Northern Arizona Gender Mentors program through Prism Network. I'm also the co-facilitator for the 1 in 10 Prescott Satellite. 1 in 10 is a youth organization that aims to help rear youth through support groups and activities and just creating social connection for them that's supportive and affirming and allows them to explore themselves and who they are and what that means for them. Especially at that age, your sexuality is so strange because you're not really a sexual being yet for most of them. So they're like, I know I'm different, and we're just there to make sure that they know they're not. That's our main goal, is to make sure that these children know they're not broken. Prism Network, we aim to help LGBTQ individuals in rural northern Arizona. We do that through our support groups like NASGEM, as well as various social groups and social connections. We are working right now to get a bunch of these different social groups that have formed online to be more interconnected. We've noticed a generational divide between our various groups. Like our meetup group tends to be older, and then we've got a signal group which is very young, and we're like, you guys need to talk to each other. There is so much that our elders, our queer elders, have to teach us that is simply being lost, unfortunately, year after year. We need to make sure we get those people connected. So that's our main goal right now, is to get these groups connected to each other. We're also working on a revitalization program. Our organization has lost a lot of administrative volunteers over the last few years due to COVID originally, and then the new administration has caused a lot of fear and backlash and things like that. So we have lost a lot of our administrative volunteers. So we are working now to get program directors, board members, board officers, because I'm currently doing 4 of the board officer positions. That's super fun. Not stressful at all either. Great. But that is Prism Network, and now I'm going to introduce me. So I'm Trinity, like I said, I'm she, her pronouns. I was raised in a fundamentalist evangelical church. My father was a pastor with them, a missionary. His church closed when I was 5, and he was brought back to Prescott for rediscipleship, that's what they called it. I was raised in the Prescott Potter's House Church until I was 14 and my mother and father separated. That's when I left that church. So I left that church, but I was not able to truly leave
the church. That church had gotten into the church. So of course, there was a lot of pain, a lot of damage that was caused by that, which I'll be talking about later. But the only way that I was able to leave that church is by joining a different one. So I joined another church, which was a non-denominational, but it was Southern Baptist, which again, not a great next step, but it was a step forward for me in my journey to self-realization and fulfillment. And I think that was one of the most important steps, was to find religious community outside of the one that I was raised in. And I think that's something that you guys are able to provide in a way that is much more healing than the one that I found. I found one that still had the same exact values, but with less control. That's what I found. You guys have a community that could provide love and acceptance and an opportunity for growth and learning that I was never given. I'd like to next just read a little excerpt from Watership Down. It's a children's book, but it is, I was reading it to my daughter. I've got a 4-year-old, and I was reading this little, it's just the intro to the book, and it made me tear up a lot. Like it had a much stronger impact on me now than whenever I was a child reading this book. It just felt very relatable to myself and the queer community and trans existence in this world. So this is Frith, which was the god of the rabbits, speaking to the lord of the rabbits, the first rabbit that was ever made. And he says, "Your people cannot rule the world, for I will not have it so. All the world will be your enemy, prince with 1,000 enemies. And whenever they catch you, they will kill you, but first they must catch you. Digger, listener, runner, prince with the swift warning, be cunning and full of tricks, and your people shall never be destroyed." That felt very impactful, especially reading it to my 4-year-old, knowing that I have 1,000 enemies in my community, in the world, in the nation I live in. I have opposition at every point. And I have to find my tricks. I have to be cunning. I have to be aware at all times of who I am with and where I am and what is safe. And I have to communicate that with my community, with the other rabbits. The other rabbits, as we're running and hiding. I have to communicate where to go, when to go, and how fast to run. And that is a very hard place to be in all the time. It is very stressful. Today, sitting in the service, it was a very interesting experience to have gone from my entire childhood having this teaching of a vindictful God. I was taught that God loved me, but only if I could fit myself into a box. God loved me, but only if I could control the thoughts inside my head. I was not allowed to have my own thoughts. I was not allowed to have my own feelings, or God would not love me. And sitting in the service today, hearing a pastor speak on God as love and God as accepting me for who I am, just because I'm authentic. And God loves authenticity. And that was beautiful to hear. Made me cry a little bit. Just to hear that, just to have that experience of this is completely opposite of the way that I was raised. And that is an incredible thing that you guys have a potential to grow. That potential is incredible. You guys are doing great work here. Of course, there's lots more to go, always. But it really is incredible. Whenever I was in the fundamentalist evangelical church, the box that they had me fit into was very small. And this box is small for everybody in those types of environments. Not just queer people. It's small for everybody. Nobody really fits in those boxes. The only way to fit in those boxes is to shave away parts of yourself. You have to cut off your limbs. You have to cut off every aspect of yourself that doesn't fit into these boxes. And if you don't, God will not love you and accept you. And the worst part, the most impactful part, is your community will not love you and accept you. I was never able to fully fit into my community, no matter how hard I tried. I shaved myself down to splinters to fit inside these boxes. And I fit inside the box, but I did not fit inside my community. And losing religious community was one of the hardest things that has happened to me. Because I did. I went from having a religious community, the Baptist church I was talking about, to coming out. When I transitioned, I lost all of my friends. I lost people who I had spent my adolescence with. I was at their house every weekend, and they were gone. We no longer speak to each other. They no longer speak to me. And that is a very damaging situation to be in. It's taken me a long time to forgive all religious communities. I felt hurt by religion in general. And then to forgive God for allowing that to happen. Now, of course, we know that God is bigger than that, and bigger than religion, and bigger than those communities. But I had to forgive God. And I had to find a way back to that. And find a way to accept that a loving God exists. And a loving God cares about me. And a loving God is more than religious communities that I was raised in. Finding these religious communities like yourself and the other affirming churches in the area is a wonderful healing process for me. It is still an ongoing process. I am still healing. Those religious communities broke me down to splinters, like I said. And I am, through community, being able to hold me up while I do it, I'm able to rebuild my foundations. But I can only do that through community. So I want to just kind of ask you guys to ensure that you as a community hold each other up so that you guys can create your foundations. I want to ask that you guys hold up the strangers you see on the street as much as you can, that you uphold the community outside of this church as well. Because you guys have the opportunity to lift each other up so that other people can build the foundation under themselves. You can't do it alone. If you're not sitting on a foundation, you can't build a foundation under yourself if you're sitting on the ground. You gotta lift up, build a foundation, and then settle into it. And I'm open to questions now. If anybody has any. Yeah.
I have a situation where people that I work with are transgender male, and I get customers who will argue with me when I call them complete. So when they argue with you, they tell you, no, that's a little girl.
Yeah.
And I basically just keep this instead right on his head.
Yeah.
Is that about the best I can do?
So if you're in a position where you have asserted somebody else's identity as the one that they identify as, and somebody else is challenging you on that, the thing to do always is to reaffirm their identity. You simply say he repeatedly. Now, sometimes you're not in a position where you can correct another person. You cannot always, especially when you're working and you've got people breathing down your neck. If you make this customer upset, they're not going to be happy with you. In that case, what I do is I simply use the correct name and pronouns in opposition to their incorrect pronouns. Like they say, she told me this, and I say, oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I kind of do that.
And that's sometimes the best we can do. If you're in a position of power in those situations, a lot of times the best thing to do to make, because the important thing is it's not the person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
The important thing is your coworker or the other people in your community that are having their identities challenged. You want to make sure you support them first.
Yes.
So simply being open to correcting other people and doing it every time will make your coworker feel affirmed. And that is the thing to do, is to focus not on the customer coming in and saying that, but on the coworker that you're working with, or on your family member, or on your community member who is trans or has an identity that is different than the societal expectations. Yes.
On that topic of pronouns, we did a section on pronouns. We had someone in our church that wanted to be called they, and of course this was a teenager, but it no longer goes here. But anyway, people have no trouble with he or she. They often have trouble with they. Well, like, how do you say that? But it helped me to think about it as, for instance, if someone is transitioning, let's say from male to female or the other way, they've got two people inside. So they are a they. It's really easy to understand that for me now when I think, okay, they've been raised this way, they're going this way, so they're kind of in the they phase. And that kind of helps me to use they a little better.
And it is interesting. So what I like to say when people ask me about the challenges of using they and pronouns, we use singular they all the time in the English language. If my wife went to the store and my daughter asked, where's mama? I'll go, they went to the store. That's a singular they. And that's maybe not correct in the English language, but the English language is an evolving language. If it was a static language, it would be a dead language. That's what that means. But they is frequently used singular in everyday language. And maybe there would be a better word for a gender-neutral pronoun. But we haven't found it. What we found was they. And that's what we're going to use because because it works. That's how the English language always does. It evolves into what works, not what would be best or what would be, the most efficient. It evolves into what works. Yes.
Well, I want you to know that we're certainly welcome here.
Thank you.
Yes.
But it's a little concerning, we've been an RSD church for many years and publishing that we are. And we've had a couple gay people come and they left. And just wondering what we're doing wrong.
So there's a chance you're not doing anything. There is. There's a chance that this area, and also just in general, queer people, LGBTQ people, are not a high percentage of people. I think in Arizona, the last time I checked, the LGBTQ population here was 6.5%, which is high for the nation. We're the 19th highest state for LGBTQ people as of 2022, I believe, which is, that's pretty crazy to think about a conservative area being the 19th highest state for LGBTQ people. But also 6.5% or 7.5, whatever it was, is not very many people. So in a congregation your size, 6.5% of, how many people do you think attend this congregation?
We've got about 100.
Okay, so yeah, so that would mean that the average would be 6 people in your congregation being queer. And I see that you guys have members of your congregation that are queer. That is incredible. Just the fact that you have consistent membership there is great. That's incredible. If you want to attract more of the LGBTQ population in the area, what I would suggest you guys do is to host LGBTQ centered and focused events. So I know you guys are affirming and you guys publish that you're affirming. It's right on the website. First thing, it's perfect. I love that. That's always my first suggestion for congregations like y'all's, is to just make sure you can see it. As soon as you get online, you know. And you guys already did that.
And we're putting up a sign.
Yes, you guys already did that. You have to sign up.
Well, not yet, not yet. We're working on it. We're working on it.
Okay, but you have the RIC sign on the door. I saw that walking in.
Oh.
And you guys have the flags on the pulpit. Beautiful. The next thing I would suggest you guys do is to hold LGBTQ specific events centered just for, like, it is focused on LGBTQ people. That would be my suggestion for that.
Well, I know that many of LGBTQ people were injured as you were in churches and basically walked away from all religion, all faith. And to me, that's an issue, how to communicate with those people to give them comfort that God is love and that they're welcome and valued.
And that damage it's created a divide between the LGBTQ community and religious communities. It has. I know, I personally, as a leader in the queer community, people will come to me on Sunday having just been kicked out of the congregation. Like, I've never met this person, and now we are in a support group together talking about religious trauma and the ways that they've been hurt, and they just got kicked out of their church.
And in all of the churches in this area, maybe 100 some, we are the only one in Prescott Valley that's accepting a queer community. Methodist Church has been off and on, but that's been the only other possibility. But and then in Prescott, there's 6 churches, maybe out of 100. So and some of them are Christian, and some are more a little different.
I think there's a synagogue too, right?
Yeah,
There is a
the synagogue is affirming. Yeah.
Yes. And another thing you guys could do is to create queer events with these other congregations in Prescott that are affirming. But it's hard when you have been damaged by religion to enter religious buildings. Just the building itself, it's hard. I have made sure that my support group for transgender individuals is not held in a religious building for that reason, because people won't go. The thing to think about that is you want to show that God is love, not just in here. You want to show that God is love everywhere. Because that is what can start healing processes. That's what helped for me, is meeting people who identified as Christian that weren't in a religious setting, that weren't being watched by their religious community. Because whenever you're being watched by your religious community, you act different. Most people will act different inside church than they do outside of church. There's a different social expectation. Whenever you're outside of church and you are interacting with LGBTQ individuals, the important thing to remember is that you are love, and you love these individuals, and you want to show that to them. You don't just want to love them, Because you can love people and not show them. You can. Happens all the time. I've done it. Love people and never show them that I love them and lost them also. That is the next thing that will happen. So you want to make sure that you are seeing these LGBTQ individuals and showing them love. And that includes things like correcting other people about their pronouns. That includes things like inviting them to events without pressure or obligation. That includes defending them openly. The openness is very important. Defending somebody in private is wonderful and something you should do. But defending somebody openly is where love is felt.
If we feel invisible, then you don't feel loved.
Yes.
And that's part of the affirmation that we have to learn more about is how do you make someone not feel invisible? You accept them, but they're still invisible.
Yep. And that, yeah, it's hard to do. Another thing that is helpful that I found, which is a strange one and isn't necessarily for everybody, is acknowledgement of my identity. So I'm a woman, I'm a trans woman. And those two things are my identity, part of my identity. They're not the main identity, but they're part of my identity. I'm also a mother and a wife. These are my identities. And having other people acknowledge that, yes, you are a trans woman. Your experience is different than mine. And your experience is 100% valid. And I love you because of your experience and your uniqueness and your authenticity. That is what feels loving to me, is knowing you are different and I don't care that you're different. I love you anyways.
I just wanted to, I've only been here about 6 months, so I'm not familiar with the queer community, and I don't know if there's a P-flag organization here or not. Or I'm just thinking that if some of you members want to go out into the community, you know, that's another way to show that you care. And that,
It's interesting. We had a P-flag community about 10 years ago. We went to the library and invited people in. There was 100 people that one time for P-flag, and somehow it disintegrated because we had pastor changes and stuff. It didn't quite continue, but it was interesting that the community responded with 100 people that day.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of LGBTQ individuals and allies here, there's a lot. Like, it feels like a very conservative area. And it is. It is 60-something% registered Republican, which also registered Republican doesn't necessarily mean that they're anti-LGBTQ, but a lot of times. There's, yeah. But, so like, that's a good, like, benchmark. Like, 62% probably aren't going to be very supportive. But that means that 40 or 38% are probably or more likely to be supportive of LGBTQ issues. And like, that's something to keep in mind, that it's not all anti-queer rhetoric here. At our Pride picnic 2 years ago, we had over 400 attendees.
Whoa.
Wild. Like, I almost died. It was great. But yeah, like, we have a lot of very supportive community here, both allies and the queer community itself. So there's a lot of goodness happening and coming here in the area.
Well, I think the church was there. This
It was.
church has always been represented at the Pride picnic.
Yeah, you guys were there. It was wonderful. And that is something else I'd like to bring up as another thing you guys can do, is to join the queer community. Not join as in, like, if you're not queer, of course, you're not going to become queer. That doesn't work. But it is LGBTQIA. A, of course, agender, asexual, aromantic. But frequently A is also ally. And you guys are an important part of that community. You guys actually make us safe. Having allies makes us safe. Because if it's just us, the 6.2% of the population here, that's scary. That's really scary. But knowing that the 6.2% of the population, along with the allies we have here, now we have a community that can keep itself safe. And so I'd like to challenge you guys to join LGBTQ events. You guys are welcome. If it's not a closed event, like our peer support groups are closed because it's a peer support group. But our other events are open. You guys can come. You guys can enjoy things like that, like those types of events, our picnics, our drag shows, our art installations, those types of things. We love to have our allies there. Because frequently our allies feel like they can't join those types of programs. But you're more than welcome. Please come to those things.
Trinity, feel free to keep going. I just want to make sure that people in the second service now get to the second service. And the rest of you, hang around and talk if you want.
Just a little note here that about 1,400 years ago, a Sufi, Muslim Sufi, that every religion has love, but love has no religion. So it's a different way of thinking of it, right?
Yes, yes it is.
Opens the mind a little bit.
And that is what, honestly, that idea of love being the overarching theme of religion and of God. Almost every definition of God has love as a key word. That's what actually brought me the most healing in my transition and my exploration of what faith means to me.
What about your parents? Are there any?
My mom's a lesbian.
Not because of you.
No, but I actually, whenever I came out to my mom, I called her, she lives in Flagstaff, so I called her, I was like, hey mom, I just want to let you know, I don't know exactly what this means yet, but I'm not a man. And my mom said, oh, well, I have something to tell you too. I'm a lesbian and I have a girlfriend. So we came out at the exact same time. It was a very sweet experience, actually. And my dad is still in the Potter's house, but he is at least accepting. I wouldn't say he's an affirming father, but he's an accepting father, which I think is the best I'm going to get. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you guys' community and the love you guys have